What's up? Welcome to Purpose Living, where we will be taking a dive into what it means to live on purpose. I am your host, Christina Estrada, founder of Purpose Culture. Grab your favorite cocktail, beer, a cup of coffee, or tea, and come sit with me each month as we listen to inspiring guests tell stories of how they have made massive strides in living out their purpose. Hey guys, I'm so excited to bring you into this space today. I'm sitting around the table with my 3 kids, and my husband's here as well. And we are going to share a little bit about the misconceptions of adoption and maybe even some social constructs that have been around adoption, which have given people different ideas that are not very helpful and are harmful. So I hope that you learn some new things here and hope that you're open to this space of learning and figuring out how we can support adopted individuals better. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me for part 2 of my motherhood story. And this is a special episode because my 3 kids are sitting here with me in kind of a round table experience here. And I'm so grateful that they have agreed to do this. And I want you all to know how much I honor you for your willingness to share your experience. So I'm going to do a little introduction. First, Christopher, he's our oldest, so he's going to go first. Go.
Hi, I'm Christopher Estrada, and I'm currently enrolled in Chaffey College. I've been going there for a couple years, and I'm looking to transfer to Cal Baptist for mechanical engineering.
Where do you work? How old are you?
I currently work at FedEx Express as a captain for loader operations for aircraft, and I'm 23 years old.
22 years old. You're going to be 23 in December. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. And second to the oldest is Matthew.
Hi, my name is Matthew. I'm 18 years old, currently enrolled at California Baptist University studying architecture and hopefully pursuing a minor in English pretty soon. So.
Yeah, cool. And our youngest, Alexis.
I'm Alexis. I'm 12 years old. In 7th grade, I play volleyball and I do art.
Yeah, there we go. All right. So I asked them to join me, and my husband is here as well, because we just kind of have a little bit of insight as a adopted family as to some of the social constructs around and the social even like ideas around adoption. And I wanted them to share, and they were willing to share, and I'm so grateful for that, about some of the experiences that they've had. So we're just going to kind of have a little conversation about it. And we've talked about it already, but we are going to talk about what are some harmful ways, and you guys can chime in anytime you want to, some harmful ways that people have maybe expressed like a response when you guys have said you are adopted. So anybody want to go first? Christopher. He's jumping up in his seat.
So I've had experiences where I'd share with people I know that I'm adopted, and I've gotten some mixed reactions. Some of them are very curious, and they think it's really cool, but others are kind of taken aback, and they kind of ask questions such as, the family you're currently with are they your real parents?
Mm-hmm. So that idea of like real, like instead of like what, like a
like
fake
blood.
family,
Yeah.
right? Like blood family.
And so I kind of have to explain to them is like that the family I grew up with, that's my real family. Like I could be related to in blood to someone else, but I've never, had experience with them throughout my life.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily make them my actual family. That's just blood.
Right.
My family is like, it's basically like home is where the heart is. That's where my current family, so the Estrada family, they're my family.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of have to explain to them, and sometimes it's hard for them to grasp.
Yeah. And that it's okay that you do, and that you could actually have 2 real families, right? That there's space for 2 real families. Yeah. So, okay, good. That's a good one. Okay.
Expanding on that, I have heard some things about how some people will ask about they'll refer to the birth parents or family as your old parents or family. And sometimes, most of the time, we're adopted at a pretty young age. Sometimes there is someone who's adopted that actually remembers their old family, as they like to call it. But we just refer to them as our birth parents, not really like our real family or our old family, just our birth parents.
Right.
The family
right.
we're with right now is a real one, and that's pretty much how it's going to stay.
Yeah, yeah. Have you had other experiences where people have said things that are like that? Like I've heard you say where people have said, "What were you like left?" or like ask you.
I have heard things about like where was I found and where did my parents get me, which like. They didn't get me from anywhere. It's not like you just go onto a site of like adoptme.com and then you look at like which one suits my family best, which one would be a good addition to my family. It's more of like just like they found me. They connected with me in a way that just spoke to them, and they knew that they could take care of me when another family couldn't. So it's not necessarily like they found me or they like.
Right, like you were sitting on the side of the road.
Yeah,
and like,
sitting on the side of a road, or just like a store. You go to the clearance aisle and find someone. I have heard that before. Were you found in the clearance aisle? It's a funny joke, but also when
Not
you mean
really.
it like it is a little fun. It is a little funny.
You do because you think it's funny because
It's
you kind of
just-
have that kind of humor, but
there
some people
are-
may not have that kind of humor.
Yes, there are some jokes that are allowed to be made, but a lot of the times people don't know how to make a joke, and if they attempt, they do end up hurting me. So
Yeah.
if you're gonna make a joke, at least be like, what is there anything that like triggers you about like your adoption that I shouldn't bring up?
Right.
So a lot of people don't have
Yeah.
like that knowledge. They just kind of like make jokes or say stuff. So
Yeah. Alexis, did you have something to say?
Or when people are like, when I mention it, they're like, "Oh, sorry." I mean, like, I get not everybody would understand that, like, this is my family and they're my family now, and it's not something to be sorry about. Like, they love me, I love them. Like, it's a happy thing for at least me. And like sometimes I forget that I'm adopted. I think like, you know, I've been here, you know, and I kind of forget, especially because I kind of look like a mix, and I look like I belong, or like, you know, I'm from you guys.
Right. But even there are some kids who don't necessarily look like their adopted family. So saying sorry about something, like Matthew has this experience probably more than anybody else in his family because he's a tall
not
white
exactly.
kid.
Well, okay, the height does make a difference. People are like, "Oh, that would explain that." But also, I am told that I do look like my mom, like a little bit. When they see my mom next to me, they wouldn't assume anything at first. They wouldn't say like, "Oh, you don't look like her. You're not adopted." But
For those of you that can't see the height thing, maybe Christine can kind of explain that.
I'm 6'3" and you're 5 foot.
We're
What?
all small families.
You're,
so
yeah, you're all
Matthew
under 6 foot.
engulfs our whole entire family, really, when he puts his arms around us. But yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that was just.
Yeah, I think that like a lot of times people, and there's a lot of kids who do not resemble their family, but maybe what are some questions of curiosity that you think people could ask instead of, oh, you like, I'm sorry, or, oh, have you ever met your real family, or things like that? What are some other things that people could say, or questions that people could ask instead of statements?
For me personally, this could go different for all sorts of people, but the question of like, did you ever meet your real family? That's not exactly offensive, but it does get me thinking. It's not really like something that's gonna like make me like angry at you or anything, but it's also like,
So maybe something like, hey, tell me your story.
Yeah, like,
tell me
just-
your adoption
I
story.
would like to learn about like the adoption process, because a lot of the times you look at something like on Netflix or something, and then they'll make a show about some girl that was adopted, and then like she has the worst family ever. Like that's not how it is. Like they don't just or like Despicable Me, they don't just let some guy wander in and be like, oh, I'll take like 3 girls with me, like and just drive them home. That's not how it works. We go through a process, and it's like a process that helps us get to know each other.
So would you say that Hollywood has gotten it wrong.
Absolutely. Well, there are some. I have seen some movies where there's like adoption and the family's like actually happy and they all get along pretty well. But another thing that happens is people confuse the adoption process with like being an orphan or like the foster system, because like foster system, that's not always the best, but it's not terrible. We don't go through like a horrific process of
Well, you haven't. Your experience hasn't been
I
that, but other
haven't.
kids may have experienced that.
yes, no, I mean like I haven't been through a horrific process of this like a parent will come in and be like, oh yeah, let's choose that one, like how they have in some movies where they're just
Right.
like they have them all line up in like the bedroom and they'll walk in and be like, oh look
That
at you,
one.
come here.
Yeah. Christopher, you had something to say? Were you going to say something about Hollywood? Because
no.
it was you said something, I think, about like characters. We were talking about this a while ago. Something about characters and how they always perceive, like, especially in scary movies, as like psychomaniacs, like adopted kids.
I did mention that. So yeah, basically, like in a lot of Hollywood movies, like they, especially ones that are centered around someone who's adopted, they make them kind of like the psychopath,
Right.
and they have all these issues, and it affects everyone else, and just kind of like a negative image of that being.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always the case. A lot of people who are adopted, yeah, they were in very bad situations, and they were taken out of those situations and put into loving homes. Yes, they may have some issues, but at heart, they're very loving, caring people.
Right. Yeah. And they have trauma, but not anything that would make them
And
nothing
nothing to the level that Hollywood likes
Right.
to portray it.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm hearing you guys say, Alexis, do you have anything else you wanted to say? She put food in her mouth. Okay. So what I'm hearing, I think all of you say, is that maybe more questions of curiosity would be good. Maybe more conversations around like, what does adoption look like? And what are some things that maybe are some triggers for you guys? And I don't know if you want to say something now? Okay.
Or like, are you in a space to talk about that? Or like,
That's a great question. Yeah, being more curious and also more like sensitive. That
Asking about anything that might trigger you.
right. Yeah, asking is that like triggering if I say these things, or have I said something that maybe triggered you if you are in a regular conversation or have a friend that it has been adopted.
But expanding on that, don't just assume that like if we're not in a space it's because we have trauma. Don't be like, oh, did that bring you trauma or something like that? Just kind of assume like we might just not want to talk about it,
Right,
or we
and-
might just be uncomfortable with it. It's not exactly like it's
or
a
that
bad
it's
thing.
not really like an issue. Like it may not even be an issue at that time
Yeah.
in your life right then and there.
Might not even like be all that worth bringing up at that
Right.
point.
Right.
Sure, you might be curious, but there are some things that we're gonna want to keep like to ourselves, and we're not gonna want to like just share with everyone.
Right. Yeah. That there are those pockets of things that there may be a struggle that's not something right now that you're ready to talk about. And I think Christopher can kind of talk a little bit more to this, is just like even the age that you were ready to talk about that stuff, and like going through a lot of stuff in high school and then coming to the age where you felt like, yeah, like, okay, I'm ready to like deal with some of the things that I've experienced. And I mean, were there times where you experienced like being, maybe because you're older now and wiser, but that I love all the faces that nobody can see, but maybe like where you felt like there's been growth in those areas where may not have been there before.
Yeah, I think as I've gotten older, I've just had to like mature, and I think there's a time and a phase, and especially in someone who's like not necessarily has to do with adoption, but has been like had some bad experiences in the past.
Right.
That it just took time to kind of start to deal with that stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, not necessarily all people who go through stuff know that they're having symptoms.
Right.
But I mean, there's a point where then they start kind of, it starts coming out, and then they kind of start catching on that there's something going on.
Yeah.
Like for me personally, like I've had to, I've dealt with that stuff, and I've come a long way since I've kind of realized it. I mean, there's professional help. My family's been very supportive. I think it's just a journey.
Yeah. And I think it's even letting people know that those experiences, that it is a journey. And just like anybody, no matter if you've been adopted or not, that there's a journey that is being had for each of us in our life. So,
I mean, everyone has their own like life experiences. I mean, everyone has
Right.
some sort of issues that have to confront. So it's not
Exactly.
just like a special case for people who are like adopted or taken out of like bad situations. It applies.
Yeah.
It can apply to everyone.
Right. Did you have something to say, Matthew?
I was just gonna say, like, what he was saying, like, it could span from like someone just not being able to take care of you. It doesn't like have to. Adoption doesn't have to come from like a really bad family. They could be like the best family ever, but just like they're not ready to
To
like
take care of kids.
take care of kids. They
yeah.
don't have the ability to like.
That are at some level, there's some sort of contact
Yeah,
with
there's
birth
like
family.
we're not like talking back and forth, but we're just she'll send me like letters every now and then just to know that she still loves me and she's still
Right.
out there like watching over me. But it's not just she's just not like involved in my personal life. So
Right.
it's comforting to know that I'm definitely like she's still out there. She still loves me. It just wasn't a place that I could grow up in safely as
Right.
well as where I do now.
Right. They all have different experiences with this. So,
I think the issue, like the things that surround the whole like contact situation, is mainly like as we deal with our personal issues that resulted from whatever situations, if it was good or bad. I think it's mainly we have to resolve with that first, and then be able to also extend some sort of forgiveness to, I mean, obviously the birth parents. We have to realize like they're human. We all make mistakes, but there has to be some sort of forgiveness and understanding first before we can actually, if we want to have more contact with them.
right. Or if the contact is even healthy.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, it all depends on where everyone is at.
Right. And each are different.
Yeah, and I think what Bibi said was like very like a big part of it. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that they like something happened. Maybe they just couldn't take care of us. I think it's like so big on like what it is, and even if you like don't have contact, like it's also like them knowing like I want you to have like a life with your like parents now, and not have to think about like what happened in the past. Not saying that like it's a bad experience, but like being free from that, you know?
For them. For them or for you?
Both.
Both. Yeah, that's good.
Rolling back to like the questions that you may ask like someone who's adopted, don't ask them if they go to your like all your big events, like, oh, did they go to your graduation, or will they go to your wedding, or are they going to be there for your birthday? Like, that's just not like, it could be a yes, it could be a no, it could be any sort of experience for them. So
Right.
maybe just staying out of that personal area would be good, just because it's just it could also trigger like emotions that we haven't felt in
Right.
so long. So
And I also think that when you ask the question, can you tell me your story, then it puts it in your guys's, it puts it in the
Puts it in our
adopted
shoes.
person's,
yeah,
like in their lap. Like, what do they want to share? What are they willing to share, instead of coming up with all of your own preconceptions
Yeah.
of what that person's experiencing.
yep. Don't like assume anything about us, because that story is always going to be different. There's never going to be like the same kind of story.
Right.
Every experience is different.
And it's always gonna be like our story, you know, and like different people's take.
It's going to be just it could be you could have your own like idea of what it is like. It could be completely different, or
Right.
it could be along the same lines, but either way, don't just like keep that solid in your mind, just like, oh, they had a bad life because they were adopted. Just kind of, if you really want to know, ask delicately. Just say, hey, I'm a little interested, tell me your story.
Right. Exactly. That's a great question. And then, like, even though the other thing that I've heard from other people is, oh, your heart is so big, you're such a good person. And we've heard that many, many times, and that is not how we perceive it at all. We like I said in episode 1 of or part 1 of this, is that this was never our plan B. Our kids were never plan B. They were always plan A for us. And that we knew we wanted to adopt when before we got married. And so this is just how God grew our family. But this was never like, oh, we couldn't get pregnant. So, you know, it was always our plan A. And it wasn't because we had this big heart. It was because that really is something that God put on our hearts to do. And that comment always gets me, because I always think like, no, because I mean, I'll ask you guys, we're not perfect. We don't have these great big hearts. We are human. They're all shaking their head no. And we know that. We're still growing. We're still growing as parents, even in this new space of life and parenting adults and growing in our relationship with adult children. So yeah. Did you want to say something?
Just any unwanted sympathy or unnecessary sympathy, pretty much.
Yes.
Any unnecessary sympathy
Absolutely.
is like pretty much that's
cringy.
really offensive, and it's a little
It's
cringy.
cringy.
It's a little cringy, especially because like some people will treat me differently after they find out I'm adopted, because they think like I have issues because they didn't actually ask.
Right.
Also, they might classify me as like, oh, he's adopted, and that's like a classification of like, okay, so I need to be sensitive to things around. Just treat me like a normal person.
You're a normal
If
person.
you want to bring up something about adoption or anything like that, just ask questions first, learn more about it, or just don't say anything at all if you don't think you're ready for that conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point. Really good point.
You need to realize that not all of us view adoption as a negative thing.
Right.
Like, for me personally, I view it as a positive thing. Every time I think, oh, I was adopted, my brain goes instantly to, obviously, Estrada family,
Yeah.
because that's my family. At such a young age, I was brought into that family. So they're my parents. I'm always thinking that as a positive thing. I don't think of it as a negative thing.
That's a good point. That almost made me cry.
Like, personally, like, the whole, oh, you're adopted, it doesn't hurt me, but it's kind of funny to say, like, I say to them, I am, so what? And then they're like, oh, well. And I think it's kind of funny to, like, see them, like, get really, like, weird and, like, awkward. And I'm just kind of laughing at them.
That's happened to me too, where people are like, imagine being adopted, and then I'm like, I'm adopted, and then they're just like, they kind of just
Like,
shut up
oh.
and be like, oh, that's my fault. Like,
Yeah, it is.
it is your like. But again, I don't have a problem with most jokes. But if you're deliberately trying to make me like, if you're deliberately trying to use the adoption to hurt me, just know that that's probably the lowest you could go for like adoption, because that's probably like the best experience that's happened to me so far. Because I mean, it is the best experience, because I wouldn't have had any other experiences like this. So
All right, any last minute like have to say that could help other people? And also, like, I'm hoping that there's other adopted kids out there, or adults that are listening to this and hearing this, or people who are wanting to adopt that are hearing this, that we're not perfect. We don't need the like sympathy, right? We're not these great human beings. I mean, we're all great human beings, but what brought us together was a love for each other. And we have built this like beautiful little community that we have now. And even with the kids, like, I feel like even listening to them talk about all of these kinds of things, that they have their own little community of support around them, and they can understand each other. Yeah.
if you are adopted, just embrace it and chill it and be proud of it. It's not like, well, depending on your circumstances, it could either be like the best experience or just better. I don't really think it could possibly be like worse than what you had before, because if you're adopted, it means like you were taken out of a family that obviously couldn't take care of you, and you're better where you are right now. So it's not like a bad thing, but also don't treat us differently after you find out that we're adopted, especially after you've known us for a while. Just be the same.
Yeah.
Just be the same around us.
Christopher, you had something to say?
I think you can also tell from the reactions of those around you. Like for me, I've kind of found really notice really nice people who I'm actually pretty close to. They've had a kind of a positive reaction when I revealed I was adopted, versus other people. Like some people may not have the best reaction to it, and it might not be to be mean, or maybe it's just they don't have an understanding, or it could just be the personality. But yeah, it could really kind of show you like who really cares about you.
Yeah, that's good. All right, well, that wraps it up. Thank you guys so much for sitting, and I've even learned so much new stuff from you guys just sitting here today, and I'm so proud of each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love you guys.
You're welcome.
I love you too.
I love you too.
That's a wrap. See? Easy peasy. It was like we're sitting here having a conversation.
Goodbye what? Aw, see you later, everybody. Zoing Scoobs, we are just on a podcast. Ruh-roh, Reggie. A roadcast.
What can I say? They're pretty great. Thank you so much for joining us for this part 2 of my motherhood story. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on livingpurpose.podcast on Instagram. You can also personally email me at purposeculturellc@gmail.com.